Welcome to Roger's That Podcast. Your host for today's podcast are Sophia, Jessica, and Galilea. And today we have a great opportunity to interview Judge Carl Schuman. Welcome, Judge Schuman. Thank you for taking your time to talk with us today. Our goal is to help our viewers learn more about potential jobs and careers in our community. We really appreciate you doing this.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from?
Yes, I am from New London, Connecticut, which is the other end of the state. And I went to New London High School, and then I did my undergraduate college at Harvard, and my law school was at Duke in North Carolina. And then from there, I came back to Connecticut, and I worked 1 year as a law clerk, and then as a state prosecutor, and then a state assistant attorney general, and then assistant United States attorney, so an attorney for the United States government, and then I became a judge. And I can tell you more about those jobs or my hobbies or anything else you'd like, but that's a quick summary.
Can you describe yourself as a judge?
As a judge, I believe I'm hardworking, and I try to be fair to both sides. I expect a lot of lawyers. I expect them to be prepared and to behave well and professionally. And I try to make my decisions as soon as possible so that the parties don't have to wait too long to get their decision. That's a short summary.
How does someone become a judge? What education is necessary?
Could you repeat the question, Galilea? I didn't quite hear you.
How does someone become a judge, or what education is necessary?
Yes. So, of course, you have to have graduated college and graduated law school and then pass the bar exam. That's what you need to do in order to become a lawyer. Then, generally, you have to have practiced law for at least 10 years. There are some exceptions to that, but you have to have been a lawyer for at least 10 years. In my case, I was a lawyer for 18 years before I became a judge. And then in Connecticut, elsewhere it differs, but in Connecticut, you have to be nominated by the governor of the state. And I'll ask you a question. Do you know who the governor of the state is today? I hear some big ums. But all right, it's Governor Lamont, but I was nominated by Governor Rowland, who's actually from that part of the state. And you have to be confirmed by the legislature, which is called the General Assembly in Connecticut. So that's a summary of the process of becoming a judge.
What are you inspired you to be a judge?
Sure. Well, when I first got out of law school, I mentioned this briefly. I was a law clerk for the other judges. And a law clerk is usually a young lawyer who assists the judges in researching the law and in writing decisions. And it was then that I realized I really respected the role of a judge, and I thought it was right for me because lawyers argue one side of the case or the other, but a judge decides who's correct and what is right. And I just always felt more comfortable saying what I thought was right than just arguing one side or the other, although all those roles are important. But I felt, for me, my comfort zone where I could do the best, most good was in deciding what was right. And that defines the job of a judge. And that's why I wanted to be, when I learned I wanted to become a judge, and why.
What are the differences? What are the different roles between a judge and a lawyer?
Yeah, so I was touching on that. A lawyer has to argue his client's position. So let's take a criminal case, for example. Someone is accused of robbery, let's say, and a robbery is taking property from another person by the use of force. Um, the the client, the person who's arrested, tells the lawyer, "I didn't do it. I wasn't there then." The lawyer, his lawyer, has to argue that side, whether or not the lawyer believes it. And the lawyer on the other side, who generally would represent the state, has to argue that it was this person who committed the crime. And the prosecutor, the lawyer for the state, may have some doubts about that too. But as a lawyer, you have to argue your client's position, whether you agree with it entirely or not. In contrast, a judge decides what is right. Now, in this case, a jury would probably decide whether the person committed the crime. But in other situations and on other issues, a judge would decide what's right. And you don't just argue a position that you may or may not agree with. You try to tell the absolute truth as you see it. There are other differences in that the judge manages the courtroom. It's kind of like your teacher. Make sure that everyone behaves and starts on time and is doing the correct task. And a judge also has to instruct the jury on what to do if there's a jury. So a judge has some different functions than a lawyer, but the main difference is that we decide things, whereas lawyers just argue things. And when I say argue, I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean, I know you've heard of the word argument. That might sound like a bad thing, but in court, it's not. It's a good thing, actually. We like to hear both sides and then in an argument and then decide it. Okay.
What qualities do you think are most important for a judge to have?
That's a very important question because it's not just a matter of being a good lawyer, a good reader, a good writer. You have to have a good temperament. I don't know if you've heard that word, but that means behavior. So you have to be open-minded, willing to listen to both sides. You have to be able to keep your cool because a lot of times you'll have people who are very upset with you. They don't like your decision. They don't like being in court. Sometimes we have prisoners who are not well behaved. Sometimes people in the audience get upset. We have to maintain our cool and try to let each side have its say, its day in court. So what we call judicial temperament is very important. And also, I'll mention two other qualities. One is we have to treat everyone with respect. We might not agree with someone, or someone might be accused of doing a very bad thing like a murder. Or it might be a very small case, just a small dispute about who owns this chair or this piece of furniture. For them, it's their most important day in court, and we have to realize that, even though to us it's not a very big case. So we have to have respect for all parties. And finally, we have to be fair. We can't decide cases based on who we like. We can't decide cases based on what's popular out there. We have to decide cases solely based on the law and the facts and who is right, regardless of whether we like the result or whether we like the person. So those are some of the most important qualities.
What is your work schedule like?
Work schedule. Oh, okay. Well, today I got in a little early for you, but I don't mind. So normally we work from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. But as a judge, you are technically on call at any time on any day, 24 hours a day, if you are in the state of Connecticut, because oftentimes the police need to have a warrant signed. A warrant is a piece of paper that gives them permission to either arrest someone or search something. And we sometimes get calls in the middle of the night from the police to sign a warrant, or on weekends. And also, I take some of my work home. It's like homework, because I want to make sure I do it right. So I do some work after the normal workday or on weekends, but we're here at the courthouse every day from 9 to 5.
Can you describe the process you follow in making a decision on a case?
Yes. So it really starts before the actual court case begins. I read what the lawyers have filed in the case. It's a memorandum. We call it a brief. I read the briefs to get familiar with the issue. Sometimes I'll do a little research, just like you've done research for your projects. I do some legal research. So that's step one, is to be prepared to go into court. Then step two is actually going into court, and I hear both sides. And this is what we call an argument. Again, it's not anything bad. It's like a debate. Both sides state their position, and I will often ask questions of them. And I expect the lawyers to be prepared for the questions. But those questions are not just to irritate lawyers. It's to help me understand what their position is, and what the consequences of a decision their way might be. So that's step two. And then step three is, depending on the issue, I can then, after court recesses, take it back into chambers, and you're in my chambers right now, or you're at least looking at them, and give it some more thought, give it some more research. And oftentimes I'll write a decision just like you write an answer to your exams, although I might have a little more time than you do. So depending, some matters you have to decide right then and there in court. Like if you're on trial, I'm sure you've heard lawyers say, "Objection, Your Honor, that evidence is irrelevant." I have to decide that right then and there, because the trial must go on. But other issues, I can give more time to, and I've just described the process I use when I have time to decide a matter. Okay.
What is the biggest challenge of your job?
Well, that's a tough question, because it's, even if seems like a small, easy case to me, it's probably the most important case to the parties in court. Here's an example. Sometimes when one person, a male, proposes to a female, or it doesn't have to be these days, and gives the female a ring, then what happens if the engagement breaks up? Does the female have to give the ring back to the male? Whose ring is it? That might not seem too important to me, but to them it's very important. It costs a lot of money, and it's symbolic. I have to decide what is right, regardless of how important it is. I will say this. One of the challenges I don't have is staying interested. It is not a boring job. It's very exciting. I really enjoy it. I like reading about the law. So I'm certainly not bored. It's just making the right decision at times is tough.
What is the most rewarding part of your job?
The most what?
The rewarding part of your job.
Oh, yeah. Well, let me give you an example. Sometimes making decisions pleases one side, and upsets another. But occasionally there's something that pleases both sides. For example, I once before approved adoptions, and both the child and the new parents were very happy about the court decision. But I'll stick with that topic and give you another example. In some cases, I've had to do what's called terminate parental rights. Now, if parents abuse or neglect kids, then their rights as parents can be terminated. That means ended. And that's not a pleasant thing to do, but usually this happens when there are foster parents. You may have heard that term. Other adults who are willing to take that child in and eventually adopt that child. And although it's not, I'm never happy when I have to terminate the biological parents' rights, the parents who gave birth or produced that child. Sometimes I have to do that and put the child in a foster home with foster parents. And I'm usually happy about doing that because the foster parents are ready to love this child, and the child is going to be in a much better home where the child's going to get 3 meals and get support for school, go to church, and engage in activities, sports, dance, art, whatever. Much better life than the child had with the biological parents. So although that's a difficult decision, oftentimes it's one that I'm pleased with and pleases other people. Okay.
How do you stay current with changes in the law and legal precedent?
That's a very important thing to do. And so we get weekly newsletters, I'll call them, with the latest cases. And I read those cases to stay current. I also am kind of a news junkie in that I like to follow the news. You may not be interested in news. You might be too young for it. But I like to follow the news and read about cases in the news, cases decided by the Supreme Court of the United States, and other important cases. I just read one this morning about decided by a federal judge in Kentucky about, we'll just say, use of pronouns for gender identity cases, which was interesting. So I just try to read a lot, stay current. It's important to do that.
What are your favorite types of cases?
Yeah, well, I actually prefer criminal cases, and that's what I'm doing now. They're not necessarily happy cases because someone is accused of committing a very serious crime, and there could be victims in the crime who are hurt. They lost property, or they were physically hurt, or their freedom was taken away from them. But you might have seen criminal cases on TV or read about them or seen movies. They're exciting. And there are a lot of constitutional issues too. So you add that all up, and we get a lot of jury trials, which I like. So criminal cases are my most favorite.
How would you describe your relationships with your clerks?
With my what?
Clerks.
Clerks. Oh, well, we are state judges, so we don't have the luxury of having permanent law clerks like the federal judges. But we do have clerks who assist us in various things, and my relationship is good. And here's what I tell them, because a lot of them are students who want to become lawyers. I tell them, you're going to learn a lot just sitting in court, watching the lawyers. And oftentimes you will learn what not to do because the lawyers make mistakes, and I point I pointed out when the lawyers make mistakes. So I tell the clerks, you're going to get a good education in court by learning what not to do.
Now we have some middle questions.
Okay.
Middle school questions.
Uh-oh. It's been a long time.
What was middle school like for you, and what are your favorite middle school memories?
Well, I have to answer it this way. First of all, I did not go to middle school. Back when I was young, we had junior high school. Have you ever heard of that? Yeah. Yeah. Now it's called middle school. But then it was just seventh and eighth grade. And then I went to high school. What is your breakdown? When do you go to middle school?
It's sixth, seventh, eighth.
Right. Okay. So it's similar. So I went to Bulkley Junior High School in New London, Connecticut. And I don't have too many memories of it. I don't think I loved it. Who likes middle school anyways? It's just kind of in between. It's not as fun as elementary school, but you don't have the freedom that you have in high school. So it's not that fun. But it was a difficult experience for me because I was just a small kid and a lot of bigger kids, and I kind of felt left out a little. But I was always good in school, and I liked science and math, so I did well in those subjects. But it was junior high school, similar to middle school. I won't be dishonest with you. I didn't love it.
When you were in middle school, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to remember. It was so long ago, but I probably wanted to be an engineer because I was good at science and math. I don't think I thought about being a lawyer, and certainly did not think about being a judge in middle school. Although my father had graduated law school, so that probably might have been in the back of my mind. But I also wanted to be an astronaut. It wasn't realistic, but I love space and flight and aeronautics and things like that. So those were some of the things I thought about.
What advice would you give to a middle school student?
Right. I guess my advice would be to hang in there. It gets better when you get to high school because you can do more things. You'll have choices as to what courses you can take, choices as to activities. You might do sports, you might do music, you might do theater. I'm sure you have a little of that now, but you have more choices in high school. So keep an open mind as to what you want to be when you grow up or what activities you want to do. Experiment a little, give something a try. You might not be interested in it, but give it a try. And work hard. I know it's tempting to watch TV or get on your phone or stuff, but work hard and keep reading. Reading is really the best way of learning.
What kind of music do you enjoy? Do you have any favorite artists or songs?
Okay, so yeah, I am an amateur musician myself, so I like to play music, and I grew up in the Beatles age. I'm sure you've heard of them. It's probably ancient history to you, but I'm a Beatles fan. John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and they wrote about 200 songs. And I've got a big, thick book of their songs, and I like to play them and sing them, and play with others.
Who has been the most influential person in your life and why?
Wow, that's tough. I mean, of course, you're always tempted to say your parents, and I had wonderful parents who kept me in line, kept me reading particularly. That was really emphasized in my house because my parents owned a bookstore, so I could get free books. I like to read a lot. But in addition to my parents, I'll mention a justice of the Supreme Court named Robert Jackson. I've read a lot about him. He's way before your time. He served as a justice it was appointed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And then he became a prosecutor after World War II in the War Crimes Tribunal in Germany. And he was a very wise justice, and he wrote very well. And he said that, among other things, legal issues like the currency depreciate through overissue. That's a complicated phrase, but it just means that less is more. Sometimes you can say things in a few words much more effectively than if you go on too long. So that's good advice to me. And can I add one thing? I didn't have the chance to mention it, but it's a little unusual, so I will mention it. That when I was a lawyer working for the state, I did get a chance to argue a case in the Supreme Court of the United States in 1986, and that was probably the highlight of my career.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Really
cool.
Pardon? It was cool.
Yeah. What is your favorite thing to snack on?
Okay, I'm a bread person. So if there were one food left in the world, I would want it to be bread. I like bread of any kind. I'm not a candy person. I don't have a weakness for chocolate. But bread, it's hard for me to resist.
Do you like any chips?
Yeah, sure. I love chips. I have a bag with me, actually. I'll have at lunchtime. But I'm not a fancy eater, so I just like them plain.
Favorite place to have vacations on?
Wow. Well, I was born in January, and I've always loved the winter. And I like to ski. So any ski area is my favorite place. I have traveled a lot. I've traveled to all 50 states. I've been to 26 countries. So I've been to a lot of places, and it's great to go different places and learn about different people. But I love to ski. So I'll say a ski resort.
Happy January birthday.
Thank you. It's coming up on the 27th, so it's still a couple weeks away.
Happy early birthday. Yeah.
Thank you.
What is your favorite sport?
Okay. I am a big sports fan. So as a participant, I love skiing. As a spectator, I'm a big football fan.
Now we're going to this or that. Do you prefer playlists or podcasts?
Do I prefer playlists or podcasts? Was that the question?
Yeah.
Boy, now I'm really dating myself because I don't really have either. I do have music in my car through my iPad. It's probably an old defunct device. And I downloaded it into my car somehow. But I'm not as savvy as you kids are with technology. But I do like to listen to music and play it as well. And I've got my iTunes. So you can look that up or ask your parents what are iTunes.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's kind of like this store that you have in the iPhone, like this app, Circle app.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Probably. I can't explain it.
I'll show you. Okay.
Yeah.
Weekends or weekdays?
Weekends or weekdays?
Mm-hmm.
Gee, that's tough. I love my job on weekdays, but sure, weekends have fun. If there's snow, ski. I like running, swimming. I like music. I watch sports on TV. I should mention my wife before I get in trouble here because I want to spend time with her, and go out to dinner or go or see a movie.
Books or movies?
Well, I'm a book reader. Although I enjoy a movie, um, I I don't know. I just find myself reading more than watching movies.
Um, do you have a favorite book or a favorite movie?
Yeah, well, I'm going to say as a book, there's a book called To Kill a Mockingbird. I don't know if you've heard of it. You're a little too young for it, but I hope you read it in high school. It's about a criminal trial, so it's close to what I do. But it's a criminal trial where a person is wrongly accused of a crime. It occurred in the South. A black person is accused of sexually assaulting a white woman, and so it has a lot of important issues, and it's well written and good drama. It's kind of a classic. So I hope when you get to high school, you'll have a chance to read To Kill a Mockingbird. As far as movies, I'll say The Wizard of Oz. Have you seen that? Have you seen it?
Yeah, I saw it with it a couple of years ago.
Yes. So there's Wicked, Wiz, all these sequels. But I could watch The Wizard of Oz once a year.
It's a nice movie.
Yeah.
Being a judge or being a lawyer?
Being a judge or?
A lawyer.
Oh, I prefer being a judge. Since, as I said, since I was a law clerk and worked for the judges, I realized that's what I wanted to be. And I'm very fortunate that I've been a judge for 27 years.
Finally, what advice would you give to a middle school student who is interested in being a judge in the future?
Yeah. Well, for one, you have to stay out of trouble, because if you got into trouble, that might prevent you from becoming a judge. But on the positive side, I would say this, and I say this to people interested in becoming lawyers too. Don't narrow your academic interests. There's no best preparation for being a lawyer or a judge. It's not just being a good English student or being a good science student or knowing history. You have to know all of your subjects. So although you'll be more interested in some than others, I would say get a variety, get a wide background, diverse background of subject matter, because you have to know how to read and write well. You have to know your history, and a lot of cases, like cases involving DNA or surveillance or cell phones, involve science. So you have to know your science too. So take a wide variety of subjects, keep reading, and stay out of trouble.
That concludes our discussion with Judge Schuman. We truly appreciate you spending time with us today to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so Sophia, Galilea, and Jessica, thank you very much. I've enjoyed spending the time with you. And Mr. Bedish, if you're in the background there, I thank you as well. Okay? All right, have a good day, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.